welcome to the Deviant Core Podcast. First ever episode. We still have a lot of stuff to cover, by the way. There's a lot of stuff going on in this world that we have to cover. I got some awesome stories for you guys to look at. One of them just actually blew me by surprise. But if you guys are just tuning in, go ahead and head on over to our Facebook, head on over to our YouTube if you want to watch clips of these videos or watch the full-length podcast. Otherwise, we're also on Spotify and some of these other channels here. So do not hesitate to check us out. Subscribe, support the channel. Let's keep growing, folks. So the first story that we're going to cover today actually blew me by surprise. It really did. Just reading this was amazing because, first of all, I can't believe a company like this is responsible for doing this. But the fact that this isn't a bigger story in the media right now is crazy. And in fact, a lot of stories that I'm going to go over today, the fact that these stories aren't big news in the media right now, some of them are. But the fact that some of these aren't big, like headlines like this, lawsuit, Hertz has customers arrested for stealing rental cars. What is the first thing that comes to your mind reading that title? Like a company is responsible for getting their own customers arrested. Let's dive in for a second. All right. A lawsuit with over 20 claimants accusing Hertz of reporting many false car thefts with legit customers getting jailed on felony charges. Holy smokes. Sometimes incarcerations last for months for legitimately renting the car. There are instances where the customer was being held at gunpoint. Whoa, for car theft. One even had a heart attack from the trauma. Wow. So the bottom line is Hertz and their customers, or Hertz has their customers arrested for stealing rental cars that they legitimately rented. What in the absolute bluster bomb is going on right now? Wow. So for those of you guys don't know, Hertz, especially what's going on with Hertz around this time right now, Hertz is going through a rough period because with the advent of the breakout of the virus, a lot of things have slowed down in the economy. A lot of things stopped moving the way they used to move. So Hertz, apparently being a rental car agency that depends on people traveling, they're actually a big part of the traveling ecosystem. With everything shutting down the way it did, they took a huge hit. Right, and to the point right now they're going bankrupt, and part of the reason Hertz is going bankrupt right now, is due to a bunch of lawsuits that they're under, realistically, and the debt that they're in. So the kind of bankruptcy that Hertz has filed is a Chapter 11, and so it's basically they're going to go through this restructuring period of how they're going to restructure the company, what they're going to do. They're probably going to get, parts of their company bought out by other companies too as well. So they're definitely going to either get broken apart and resized or something. But part of their debt is I think they owe $19 billion. Majority of it is backed by their inventory, their cars. And I think I read somewhere too that like in order for Hertz to really get back to what they need to do, they got to sell like half their inventory in order to just get by. Imagine, as a business owner, you got your own network and inventory and everything like that, but for you to make it, in order for you to survive, you have to sell half of your products, half of your inventory, in order to just stay alive. That's not a sustainable model, folks. Yeah, they are not in a sustainable situation right now. And let's just be clear. Part of also lawsuits too. They've been in lawsuits since 2006. It's not this one particularly for this story, but I mean they've been issuing settlements over $11 million since 2006. So they've just been bleeding cash left and right. But let's get on to the story here, right? So, besides the customer's arrest, the lawsuit claims that Hertz inventory tracking system does not work. Instead of having it fixed, it continues to falsely claim the car is stolen. In this way, Hertz is effectively using the police criminal justice system along with taxpayer money to prop up its inventory control. Hertz policies, procedures, and practices disproportionately condemn poor minorities to prison and persecution while presuming their guilt. Many of these innocent individuals lacking money to access effective legal services remain willfully and wrongfully in prisons for months as their cases slowly wind through the court system. And of course, Hertz disputes these claims. They say in a statement that it extensively reviewed lawsuits and strongly disputes these claims. We have compiled significant evidence and will vigorously defend our case in court, Hertz said. The vast majority of claims involving renters whose arrest resulted from failure to return rented vehicles for weeks past their due date. In violation of this rental agreement and despite our repeated attempts to communicate with them about the status of their vehicle. So essentially what's going on is that Hertz is, instead of investing their time and efforts into proper inventory tracking mechanisms and retrieval mechanisms for their company, what they essentially do is they flag the vehicles. So let's say this. Let's talk about this for a second, because this is incredible. So instead of investing the time and effort and the money that you need for a proper inventory tracking system, what they would essentially do is they probably lose track of their employees, the customers who are paying them. They lose track of the payment method, and then they would most likely flag your vehicle. So let's say if you rented a car and you're making your payments on time. Let's say for some reason in their system, your payments on time, your payments don't register, right? So the system flags your vehicle as stolen. So instead of them reviewing it, they just send it up to the cops to handle it. So the cops get it, they hunt you down and put you in jail, right? Even when we started this video, some people are being held at gunpoint. Jesus, imagine being held at gunpoint for a car that cops are saying that you stole, but you legitimately rented. Imagine. Someone even had a heart attack, which is nuts. That is nuts. So essentially, they're using taxpayers' dollars, they're using the criminal justice system to prop up their inventory control measures. So first of all, you can see how, let me tell you this. A while back, I used to sell cars. And I I worked in a subprime dealership. For you guys don't know, anytime you hear subprime, it's for people who need access to the credit system, and they don't because their credit's not the greatest. So they go to a subprime lender or institution who would then provide them the funds at exceedingly high interest rate. But then it's their access to those funds essentially. So I worked at a subprime dealership, and the kind of people you see that will come through those dealerships are all like people I just described who are frozen out of the credit market. And what they do is, obviously we live in a nation where you got to get somewhere and you need a car. You need a vehicle. Simple as that. So if you can't get credit for a car, most people you see coming through there usually have rentals, right? So the people who don't have the means to get a car can't get access to credit, so they rent these cars. So now imagine putting yourself in the shoes of someone who's in that situation, right? You don't have much resources to begin with, and you're making your payments on time. By the way, the payments on these rental cars and I think most of them go by weekly, and I think it's dependent on what you decide to buy. But the payments on these are expensive. Some of them like $50 to $100 a week, folks, for a rental car that someone else has already driven and probably beat the heck out of, right? So these people are paying exorbitant amount of rates for the rental cars. Now imagine you in that situation and you get pulled over and accused of stealing. Now you make your payments every month, but you get accused of stealing the car that you just made a payment on. Imagine you get a gun pulled out on you. Someone even had a heart attack. Imagine. See, when people talk about racism in relations to institutions, this is what I see. When companies like these neglect and a lot of this stuff is just, it's due to just ignorance, right? Because Hertz, they were ignorant in this situation, right? They knew what needed to be done and didn't do it. So when people like this fall victim to this situation, right, now they have to go through the crappy court systems that are very slow, and especially now during the pandemic, it's even slower, and your life's ruined. So when people talk about criminal justice and things like this and racist institutions, you can see how people can perceive this as that, right? We can see that because the vast majority of people who are affected, and it even goes on to say later in this article, the vast majority of people who are affected are poor minorities people. So not only are they targeting people who are in the poor minority areas, but they're also using your tax dollars, you and my tax dollars, because they're funded by us after all, to then take care essentially of their inventory, to again take care of their repo. Something's got to happen to this company. I mean, I hope they get awarded 100% of what they're looking for. And the people who are currently stuck in the system due to this stuff, you know, I hope they get the justice they deserve. Even just looking here, in the other problems that once so actually let's jump ahead here. The strange thing is that this isn't the first time Hertz has been accused of this. Numerous lawsuits have been filed, with some going in Hertz's favor and some to the plaintiffs. In some cases, the false arrests happened because Hertz's computer system compiled the wrong payment information and would delete the extension from other renters' information. The other problem is that the theft packages are compiled, and once they're compiled, no one gives them a last look for review before filing it with the police. A profile in the USA Today, a woman from Florida spent more than 170 days in jail solely because Hertz has a false police report. The rental extension that she received wasn't part of the package that was turned into the police case. So right off the bat, someone got 170 days in jail. Spent 170 days in jail. What that tells me, when someone spends 170 days in jail, that just says you don't have access to not only bail, but a lawyer to really help you out. And these are the kind of people it targets. So when people talk, when you look at the tension that's going on right now in the world, and especially the United States, and we look at when people talk about end to racism and things like that, you know, these are the kind of nonsense that we're talking about. We're talking about negligent companies, and sometimes it's not even willfully like companies trying to be racist on purpose. It's not that, but just because the actions that they take negatively and disproportionately negatively affects a group of people who are in categories where they don't have a good reputation with police officers. They don't, right? So you can see how institutions like this can be considered racist. We only feed into our problems when we allow companies like this to continuously exist. I mean, first of all, how they existed this long without a proper inventory tracking method? Is anyone asking that question? Like, how have they made it this far without properly tracking their stuff? That's crazy, man. But when I saw that, I'm like, this is crazy. We got to talk about it. So there it is. So I hope those guys get the justice they deserve. If you're just tuning in to the Deviant Core podcast, first of all, let me just say welcome, folks. And we got a bunch more stories to cover.